Good night, everybody, and welcome to Live and Raw Business Breakthroughs. I'm excited for tonight's session because I have my first guest as a podcast interviewee, Mr. Nick Gemmel, and he is with Awakened Tradesman and the Pipedreams Solution Guy. So join us as we kind of share conversation back and forth tonight. We're going to share some things about mindset, about men's mental health, and about what you can do to get out of the stuck that you might be stuck in, especially here with COVID, with us being locked down, not being able to reach out and do the things that we normally like to do, like go to the gym and de-stress, right? So, let's jump into it here, eh? So welcome, Nick. Thank you for being my first guest on this podcast.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, man. No, I'm glad we were able to find a time that worked. Yeah, it's great.
Absolutely. I know we've been kicking around some ideas here for the last little while here, and we're looking forward to getting back into it and then go from there, right? So let's talk about, give us a little bit about your background and how it is that you got into becoming the Awakened Tradesman, and where Pipedreams Solutions came from.
Yeah, well, 1998, I started as a welder in Lethbridge, Alberta, and then worked my way up there and went on my own as a rig welder in 2004, and then worked that oil field and facilities till about 2012 when I went pipeline inspecting, and from there, went on to be a construction manager and then welding inspector. And about 2.5 years ago, my wife left. So that's about, in a nutshell, like that's where it went. So, trades went away, working, got married, 2 kids, and then, just didn't really deal with my stuff too good as far as maintaining relationships. And then one day she just said, I'm done, and walked out the door. So in that, and that's where the Awakened Tradesman came from, was I just realized once I got out, after, 6-8 months of just kind of being in the pit, I was like, man, like this is not cool. Like, chasing tail and, getting the next shiny thing wasn't really working for me. And maybe it was me that caused this, right? And so that's where the awakening, and I went away to rehab to Thailand for 2 months last April, and I haven't looked back from that. Was kind of the start of my personal development journey, and and coming out of that, I started with a buddy of mine who was doing this Men of Iron thing, and I just took to it. I never even thought about, anything personal development wise. And now, and coming out of rehab for not drugs or alcohol, they did, to be honest, they didn't even know how to treat me, because they're like, yeah, you can come, but, like, well, what's your thing? I'm like, man, I just don't feel anything. And they're like, yeah, okay. And we talked a little bit. They're like, no, just get your ass over here. And but a lot of the things that I learned there, I'm kind of jumping ahead a bit, but it's all relevant. Like I was, that's the whirlwind of this trades, right? And this industry is all of a sudden I'm 20 years deep and I don't feel anything, no happiness, no joy. I'll buy $100,000 truck and feel nothing, right? I'll, have all these things and nothing. I had a motorcycle business as well, but I felt nothing. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but like,
I think it does. There's a lot you just shared there, and I'd like to go back and unpack, a little bit of it, and kind of just maybe, and hopefully for some of our viewers, help them see if there's any spots that maybe they can relate to and go, holy shit, maybe that's what's going on with me. So I'd like to go back to when you first became aware that, maybe it wasn't your wife, maybe it wasn't the situation, maybe it was you. What was it that made you realize that holy crap, it might be me.
Well, oh, I went to like 2 counseling sessions, trying to get my wife. We've already been separated for about not even or just about a year at that point. And I just said, screw it, I'm going, whether you show up or not. I'm going to go to these 2 counseling sessions, like couples counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ended up just me being there. And so after, close to the end of the second session, the lady's like, the therapist is like, well, maybe we should talk. You want to just talk about you for a bit? I don't think she's coming, dude. Like, like
Right.
maybe let's just, you kind of said a few things that kind of, sparks me some interest. And, maybe we'll touch on those a little bit. And yeah, if you want to dive into that. And in that discussion, the rest of that session, it was like, well, a lot of what you're having and feeling is addiction, right? Like that emptiness that most addicts feel, that they're trying to fill with something. She says that's where it sounds like that's where you're at. And this big light bulb went off where it was like, man, okay, I always thought if I made more money, we would be happy. Like, let's just get, if we had X amount of dollars in the bank, right? Like, I had that discussion with my financial guy. I'm like, how much money do I need by 45, like, to be good? And he's like, okay, this much money. Okay, let's do that. So then it was grind. Let's get this much money. And then we can take the foot off the gas. Well, in doing that, all I did was shut everybody out, because all I did was, okay, well, when's the next job coming? Well, okay, well,
so you were not addicted, you were addicted to work. Yeah. And getting that 45 target nailed down than you were anything else, right? So like I can relate to the addiction side because I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict. So I know, for me, it was, for a big part of my life, it was me trying to fit in, right? So if I drank hard and I became the guy that drank more than everybody else, right? I fit in. And so I kind of get where you're coming from with that, but I still don't understand, that emptiness that you felt. I mean, being a workaholic, you still have that same addiction. Like but kind of relate how that fits in and how someone, perhaps one of our listeners might be able to go, well, maybe that's my problem.
Yeah. If you kind of, and this is where where it fit in for me was, it didn't matter what it was. Once I got to the end, so let's say it was a bodybuilding competition, which I did, or a powerlifting competition, I would do that and do well, but not feel anything. So it's just like, okay, I'm worked up the ladder to construction manager, right? At a high, it's one of the biggest oil and gas distributors in North America. And I was the youngest at the time, like 34 years old, right? Like, and I felt nothing. Like, it was always, what's next?
Yeah.
And which is great for being a driven person, but there was a lot of things, and that's where the unpackaging came. Was there was a lot of abandonment. There was a lot of mostly abandonment, I will say, that made me a driven person, which served me in some areas, which, getting a promotion and doing all of that, and working you to the bone, till all hours of the night, and even on my days off, I would work, but I would never feel joy. Like, it was just, okay, give me more. I'll take on more. I'll bite off another chunk, like, but then everything suffered. It was, okay, there was no more date nights. It was always, okay, I'm working, I'm home for 4 days, oh, I have to sign all these time tickets. No, I'll, the clerk's yelling at you to yelling. She's asking for these time tickets. Well, you should be able to wait till you're back at work, but I would do it on my days off and then get all the permits ready and do everything so that we're all lined up, but I would never feel like I was accomplishing anything, you know. I was never felt like, okay, now we're here. Now I can take the foot off the gas. And that was where the hole was, is when I finally realized, like, it doesn't matter how much I put in, you know, externally, I'm not filling that hole.
So you were trying to just go out and fill it with money or toys or whatever, and it just
Yep.
wasn't happening. So let's go back. You made a comment there about, abandoning. Is that was you abandoning your family, or was that you feeling abandoned?
I was feeling abandoned way back, the earliest I could trace it was like back to high school. And, I had a couple buddies leave. They went religious and I didn't really feel that. And, nothing against it, but just wasn't my thing. And, guys I grew up with, when we were knee high to a grasshopper, and now all of a sudden they were gone. But never taken a second look at all of this, and this is where the therapy and let's dive in.
It's funny you mentioned
real,
that.
man. Like, this shit is real. Like,
Absolutely.
your abandoned inner child it's gonna drive you. Like, every time you're triggered, if it usually kicks back to something that happened way back when. Like,
So
this shit.
I agree with you 100% there, because I look back at my own life, and I read a really good book by John Eldridge, Way of the Wild at Heart, and he talks about being abandoned, being abandoned by the guy upstairs, and abandoning Jesus on the cross, kind of stuff, but also how that relates to, and I took it more literal, as how it relates to my dad and me, right? My dad and me were pretty close. Like, we were like this growing up. We used to go fishing all the time, and then 8 or 9 years old, we stopped going fishing, and I couldn't figure out what. I felt abandoned. Right, that was the first instance in my life, and then I look a little bit further down the road. My best friend and his brother, who I became best friends with in a very short period of time, we were like soulmates. Kenny and I were only known us for probably only knew each other for less than 6 months, but it's like we'd known. It's one of those connections where we felt like we'd known each other all our lives, and then he gets killed, and then him and my best friend, he goes back home to Caslow. I'm abandoned. I'm again left alone. And so when I start looking at how I dealt with that, well, what do you think a good alcoholic's going to do? Right?
Yep.
Tilt the bottle back, and I numbed it. I numbed it with drugs. I numbed it with alcohol. And now that I'm 55 years old and I'm looking back at doing some of that deep dive stuff into some of my core beliefs, I realized that I never dealt with that death of my best friend, or the death of my other friend who left me alone, right? And so you go, like, how did that affect my life? Now, when I go back and change it, well, absolutely, everybody'd love to go back and change and give a second chance, but that's not our chance. We get one chance of life, and the things that we go through, the stuff that faces, what's the word I'm trying to say here? Michelangelo was asked, like, how did you know David was in the stone? And he goes, I didn't. I just let the stone reveal it. And I just chipped it away until it was done. And so that's what life does to us as human beings, is it doesn't build our character, it reveals our character as we grow. So, I mean, good on you that you were able to find this out. But I mean, obviously there's a ton of pain involved and a ton of heartache, right?
Yeah. And that's the driving force behind the Pipe Dream Solution is being, just being aware of that going around you, and being able to deal with those feelings. So a lot of men, or most men, would just drive it down, whether it's alcohol or drugs, sex, porn, whatever floats your boat, man. Instagram, Facebook, like, you can sedate with anything. And this is the world these days. So I'll give you a perfect example. Is I put a question out on a couple Facebook groups, pipeline Facebook groups, a couple days ago. a simple question. And if you know anything about pipeline, there's main line and there's pour boy. So just a little,
Yeah.
little crew going back, putting sections together. So simple, which crew would you rather be on? So I'm giving you permission to, like, if you had a choice, right? Would you pick A or B? Is essentially what it is. And a lot of dudes would just say, no, whatever you give me, like, I'm not asking you that, dude. So these are sedated. This is how sedated we are as men these days, is you can't even answer a simple freaking question. So this is where I was at. Like, I'm going to, just give me, I'll take what you give me. Well,
Yeah.
no, that's not the question, dude. Like, the question is, well, if you had a choice, it's like when your wife asks you, what restaurant do you want? And you say, I don't know. Well, take a freaking stand, man. Like, you don't even know. Like, someone is giving you permission to, like, express your opinion, but you're so sedated and knocked down that you just, yeah, I don't care. And this is the problem.
Absolutely. And this is obviously where Awakened Tradesman comes from. So walk us through, what you offer, men who are struggling with, that aloneness, that emptiness, that, like something's broken, but I don't know what. Like walk us through how you would help them and guide them to the outcome, and what would the outcome be?
Yeah. So I just started a new group here on January 4th, and it was pretty cool to see, man. There was so we go and we take them through a 2-week pre-training. We we basically break them down mentally over, and ask some very simple questions, just like mainline or poor boy, basically,
Mhm.
you know, and not to get in specifics, right? Because I kind of want to keep a little bit of secret, but what
Yeah.
it's doing is it's just actually you're reflecting on what you actually want and why you are the way that you are and where the facts of your life are. So we go 2 weeks of pretty basic questions, but they end up being very difficult for a lot of people, and break down, okay, where am I at? What are the facts of my life? How do I feel about those facts? And is my life serving me? And these are a lot of questions that most people have never asked themselves. And the cool part is, through the 2-week pre-training, people that come in for different, it's just like rehab. People that came in there for, I'm going to save my marriage because I'm going to go to rehab and she'll take me back, right? You're doing it for somebody else.
Yeah.
I got some people, or one person in particular, who came in to see if it would be good for somebody else and other people. But during it, at the end, his testimonial made me cry and tear up like a mofo, because he's like, I came in for somebody else and I realized that I needed this more than anybody right now. And it was amazing to see. So after the 2 weeks, then we build them up with daily accountability in all 4 areas of their lives.
Right.
As men, we're pretty good at either, we're going to push towards making money or have a shiny body, look at, I look really good in the mirror, but everything else is falling down, or they're just doting on their kids all day long and they don't know how to produce in business and make money, and their bodies are falling apart because they're just, everything is for the kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, oh, go ahead.
I was just clearing my throat. I had a question that you talked about, um, kind of some of the pain, like the tears that you welled up with that emotion. And so I want to just talk about that a little bit, because as men, especially in the oil patch, like, I was a rigger, you're a pipeliner, you know, oilmen don't cry. Cowboys don't cry. We were raised, don't, never, ever, ever. Right. That's the massive sign of weakness, right? I mean, I got bullied in school. If I cried, they'd beat the crap out of me. Right. And so how is it that in this world today, right, that you're okay talking about crying, And let's get into that, because I think that's a powerful emotion. And I'll share you my story about my revelation after you get done with yours. But I think we need to talk about that, because when we talk about men's mental health, you know, we need to be willing to, have those conversations that are meaningful to men, meaningful to say, hey, how are you? And not just, hey, how you doing, but how are you? And
Mhm.
expect to get a real authentic answer, not just, oh, I'm fine. And of course, you know what fine stands for, right?
Yep.
If someone tells you they're fine, you know you're in trouble, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that was where we were at with, um, you know, so it was actually like what made me tear up was this guy, and it was an extra assignment that I had to give them, that I gave them, because somebody didn't do their stuff on time. So we keep people very accountable, like in that pre-training. Okay, by this time you're going to have this done, this video done, you know, and somebody was late. So that was in my Facebook group, I said, my main Facebook group, all I asked was, hey man, or I said, everybody post a video of their testimonial of the 2 weeks, like their biggest takeaway in the 2 weeks. And I'm expecting answers like, oh man, you know what? I just, you know, it was just an opportunity for me to let go. And, and I'm excited for the next, it's a 90-day program. I'm excited to see what's next. There was that, but this one guy in particular, he's talking about how he can actually smile again. And he used it was a movie analogy, right? With it was a cartoon boy, and he was able to like smile again. And he's tearing up as he's saying this, and being able to accept, and back to men again, and this is what we're talking about, like to accept somebody saying something nice about you. You just don't know, you don't know how to take that.
Brush it
you
off.
know Usually, bro, oh yeah, no thanks, you would say that to anybody, or you know what I mean, like, oh, he doesn't really mean it, he's just playing it up for the camera or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But to actually sit there and feel it and be like, you know what, like what I'm doing is actually making a difference, and it's only because I freaking showed up. I'm not making them do the work, or I'm not making them feel anything. They're doing that by answering their own questions and feeling that same, you know, being able to feel again and be, it's a safe place. Like it's a closed Facebook group, right? No one else can see the videos. No one else can see their, other than the testimonials. It's still a private group, but
Yeah.
but where the real vulnerable stuff happens, it's just their unit of 5 guys, and they're running through this. And that's the big difference, is when one guy opened up at the beginning and was raw as hell, the other people saw that and they're like, holy, like I'm getting messages like, I don't think I can do this, I can't top that. Like that guy set the bar way too high. Like there's no way. This guy has been in the program for a year now, though. So for him to be able to talk like that and be vulnerable like that is amazing. So the new guys coming in were able to see that and like, holy shit. And this was a guy that was in the Hells Angels. I shouldn't say that, but he was in the biker gang. You know what I mean? Like way back when, way back when. And it just allows other people to see, like when they're vulnerable, like, man, you know what? It's not that bad. It's not that bad for me to actually say what I'm feeling.
Is
And
it, is
when
it
in
okay for
context,
men? Is it okay for men to be vulnerable?
yes, in the right place, in the right time. So at work, no, I will come out and say that, and right? Work is not that place, but you need to surround yourself with a community that allows that, right? Whether it's your wife, right? Because most marriages, your wife doesn't even know. My wife didn't know that I was depressed for, I didn't even know that I was, but looking back, or let's call it low mood, because I was never diagnosed, right? Let's call it mood for about 10 years, like looking back at behaviors and actions when I was wanting to go golfing and making a hissy fit because I couldn't go golfing rather than being at a family barbecue, do you think that was because I didn't want to be at the family barbecue and be a disconnected prick? No, it was me not knowing how I'm used to being at work. I'm used to, and now I'm home for like 2 months, and I'm chewing at the bit because I don't know anything else other than working 12, 14-hour days. Man, I just want to go slug some beers with the boys, hit the ball around, and that's what I want to do. So it wasn't a fact of, it's getting to that point where if the people you have around you, you're not able to have those conversations like, hey man, like, why did you have that hissy fit? It's like they just expect that out of you. Your group of drinking buddies, your family expects that out of you. Mom and dad just knew that I never talked. Like that was the thing. And now I'm doing podcasts with like yourself, and a bunch of other people that are, and my social media is pretty open about, letting your shit out. But it's got to be in the safe place. Like just ranting and crying in your car, is probably not the best with a group of buddies. But guess what? If you're able to, it's in context. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. So watching a chick flick with your wife, and it's okay to cry. But
hell yeah.
If you're saying, see you later to your buddy at work, probably not a good idea.
Probably not a good idea, man. No, and if you get triggered at work too, my biggest thing is just, or if you get pissed off at work, go let it out, man. Like go in your car, go scream, go yell. Like, as men, you just hold it in. And then when you hold it in, guess what happens? You're going to blow up at some point. It's just, it's been said so many times. I never really understood what that was. But now on a daily basis, it's an app that we use, and we deal with our feelings every day.
Yeah.
What's your trigger? I'm also a cognitive behavioral practitioner, not a therapist, but I can work people through, an activating event and get to what the actual trigger actually is, a good idea.
Yeah.
And we deal with that every day. So we have these guys, everyone now, that started the 2-week pre-training is doing this basically cognitive behavioral therapy work every day on their phone. And they do it themselves. They just work through a trigger, man. A trigger.
So you're helping them be aware of everything. And then when they're aware of it, they can record that they're being aware of it. And then they can take action on it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the big thing about CBT is there's always an actionable item. It's like, okay, because you get to choose your narrative. You get to choose your story. And we come up with the, with the okay, what's the story right now? What's the should story? Like, what do you think should happen in this? My wife's a bitch. Okay, well, what do you think? She should not be a bitch. Okay, well, and then we create a story that's aligned with our values and our mission. We teach the guys how to come up with their actual values, put them through an exercise, which, most people don't even know. I didn't even know it was a thing, like really, and it made that big of an impact. So they're revisiting that on a daily basis. Okay, why does this trigger mean something to you? Like, oh, okay, because these are your values. This is why it triggered you. Okay, and now what's the narrative? What do you want to, and then what do you want to create out of this? You know what? I want to create, date nights with my wife because it, one of my values is connection, and I want to connect with her better.
Nice.
Boom.
Nice.
When are you going to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's powerful. When I look back in my life and my addiction, not being aware was one of the biggest problems I had in everything. Because I didn't know I was doing it. I didn't know I was wrecking relationships. And mind you, I didn't care. because I was too drunk. But, awareness didn't even fit into my picture. Even as I was getting sober, it took a long time for me to become aware of my behaviors. Like I work a 12-step program. So, steps 6 and 7 are becoming aware of your behaviors, right? And,
Yeah. Just look back at when you want, I started looking back at my behaviors, and that's what it was, listen, I would come home, where would I go? Straight out to the garage. Oh, hey, I'm going to go work on some things. I never built anything out there, really. Like it was just a big shop that I just drank a bunch of beer in, really. So I would go out there, make an excuse to go build shit. And then, you know what? What that gets you? Your daughter, 14 years old, sitting in a car telling you that she doesn't know you because you were never around.
that's right.
That's what that gets you. So if that sounds familiar, like, hey, I'm just going to go drink with the boys. It's Friday night. Okay, that's fine. And then it's Saturday night. And then it's Sunday night. And then it's Monday. And then it's the rest of the week. And then all of a sudden you're 2 months in from your days off, oh, well, what did you do with your wife and your kids? Man, I don't know. We did stuff. No, you showed up to a couple of games, let's say it was a soccer game or whatever, and you were playing on your phone trying to get your next job or doing whatever. That's what you're worried about. Yeah. So we teach people how to be present in their lives and accountable. So back to the program, like that's what it is, the 2-week pre-training, and then they're accountable to their fitness, their fuel, which is fulfillment, family, and their relationships, and their finances and business if they're self-employed. So you're accountable every day. So we call it have it all lifestyle, right? Like, because there's a reason for it. Like we get consumed with one. Like I say, you either, how many gym buffs happened to me, and that's where the addiction part fell in. I was really good at the fitness once I got my ass off the couch and actually got a trainer again. I did need to lose weight, right? Don't get me wrong, but I went full bore, right? The trainer, everything went on steroids for 2 years.
That's typical with addictions, right? It's on or off. It's all in or nothing, right? And I'm all for that. And so I think you've got a lot of stuff there. I'm really kind of curious as to, as you went through the journey that you went through, how did Awaken Tradesman happen? Like, where did that story begin? Like, where did you go from therapy? Holy shit, I'm screwed up. And how did Awaken Tradesman begin? Because I think in that story is a powerful connection between, where guys are at and where they, what that transition is to recovery.
Yeah. So I went to, like, coming out of rehab, I started actually listening. So it's funny how things show up when you're ready for it, right? So my buddy was having all these posts showing, like have it all lifestyle, dealing with their stories, your shitty stories in your head, almost burning my life to the ground doing triathlons. That was his thing, right? And, basically, he should have been, he might as well have been sleeping with his secretary, or because that's how much time they spent together, right? When he should have been home with his wife. So I'm listening and seeing all of this stuff, and I'm like, God damn it, that's me. Like, we lived together 20 years ago, which is the crazy thing. Yeah.
That's me too.
Yeah. So, like, so I'm listening and watching all of this, and I'm like, man, you know what? So I reached out to him, and I was just getting out of Thailand, back from rehab. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? We should talk. He's like, well, what's going on, man? Like, I thought you were doing good. And that's where social media can be a bitch, right? Because all he saw was some cool posts of me lifting heavy shit and looking really good. And he's like, I thought things were going good. I'm like, no. Do you see one picture with my wife, my kids? Like, nothing. Like, no. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm listening to all of this. And then what I did was I flew over, we started talking. And he's like, this is what I'm coaching now. This is what I'm teaching. He just came out of the Warrior program with Garrett White, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, man, no, like we should, this is what I'm teaching. This is what we got going on. Do you want a part of it? I'm like, yes, because you can't run and hide in that model. When you're accountable every day in your fitness, your fuel, your family, and your finances, you can't run and just sedate with just whether it's, like I say, whether it's your kids, or business. You can't hide in your body. You're accountable every day to a group. So there's 5 of us, right, that went through the whole program together. And now every day, still over a year later, we're every day on Messenger, we're checking in. Okay, did you do all 4 things that you said you were going to do today, or all 8?
Nice. And that's a
Yeah,
big piece, the accountability, right? You know,
huge.
a huge piece of life, whether it's your relationships, your family, your friends, whatever, business, finances. I mean, that's a huge piece. So, I get excited about that because my wife and I just, on Sunday we're driving back home from my mom and dad's, and we're talking about some of the gaps that we've got in our life. And I said, well, look, the only way we're going to fill those up is if you and I are accountable to each other, because there's some big things that we want to achieve this year in business and in our personal life. First we set our personal goals, then we set our business goals to supply and meet our personal goals. And then we kind of go, okay, what do we need to do every day to move these things forward? And we got to go, hey, we said we were going to plan tonight. Let's plan, right? Hold each other accountable. What do we do? What do we do today that moved us forward? What happened that was, and what didn't we do? More importantly, is what we didn't do that we should have done, right? Because that's sometimes more that highlights sometimes more the story, the stuff that isn't done than the stuff that does get done, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where in asking yourself those questions, like that's where the awakened tradesman came to be, was all of a sudden. So I'm going through that transition of rehab, and then meeting my buddy again after 20 years. We started connecting again. And then, man, and then all of a sudden, an inspector friend of mine took his life.
Oh no.
And yeah, so this was over a year and 3 months ago. He took his life. And that's when I started my podcast, the Pipe Dream Podcast. I was like, man, like I just drew a line in the sand and said, listen, like this can't happen anymore. Like obviously, I had a lot of shitty thoughts that I don't know if I ever would have did it, is end of my life, but there was definitely a lot of narrative going on behind the scenes in my head of, is this worth it? Like, you're
Yeah.
losing it all. You lost your family. You're going to lose all your finances. Like that's what happens in a divorce. Like you're the dude. You're gonna lose everything. Like that's just the
Yeah.
way that it is.
Yeah.
So all of this shit going on, like, okay, 20 years in the industry, like, was it worth it? Was it worth it at all?
No.
And guess what?
You speak in my story, man. I lost my first marriage to the oil patch. And the same stuff. The depression kicks in, and I met my new wife. We grew an amazing business together, and I called her my good luck charm. Then we lost it, went bankrupt, and then that depression set in again. And you're right. I wanted to stick a gun in my mouth and pull the trigger.
Yep.
And how do you navigate through all of that crap and still come out the other side? Like, I didn't have the same support stuff that you had, mind you. I started reading positive thinking books a long time ago. So I've
Yep.
been into personal development for probably 3 decades by now, almost, maybe not quite, 2.5
Yeah.
anyway. And so there was some good books that I had to read that kind of kept me out of the batshit crazy. But you know, coming through all of that and then getting into a drug addiction treatment center for my daughter, saving my life, then realizing, hey, you should go to an AA meeting because you're kind of messed up. And then walking in, and this is what I think is powerful. And I hope somebody that's listening to this connects to either what you're saying or what I'm saying, is because we don't know how important the story we hear connects with us. And I want to just share a little bit about my story and how I got to where I am, because I think the two of us together are going to create some pretty cool stuff. I
Mhm.
don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but I think our joint venture going forward is going to be some pretty cool stuff coming to really help ramp up men and their growth and their businesses, which is really cool. Um, Getting into that long-term drug treatment center to save my daughter's life, right? 6 months after going bankrupt, I got a head full of batshit crazy going on. Started going through the program that works on us, and we talk about men crying. I I really broke the dam that held all those tears back. Like, I grew up in that cowboy household where men cowboys don't cry, held it back for decades, never cried. I mean, I think the last time I cried was my granddad passed away and I was 12 years old. It was just crazy pushing the stuff down. And so when I get into this men's group and I start sharing some of the stuff that I've done, right, like starting to get really vulnerable, I got to the point where I just opened my mouth and I started crying, and I couldn't stop it. It was just this flood of emotion. I didn't even know what it was. Like, because when I look back over my life, I had two emotions: happy or angry.
Mhm.
That was it. And if it didn't fit into that category, it got pushed down. And so it blew up as anger all the time, right? And going through that process over probably a 3-month period, I started to feel things that I hadn't felt before. Right. So now, because I let some of that emotion go, and I like the bad emotion go, I call it the bad emotion because it was all that pent up self hate, I think, if you would, that I let out and allowed me to bring in some good stuff. And all of a sudden now I can feel pain. I can feel sadness. I can feel joy. I can feel love. I can feel peace. Like, I started feeling these emotions I never felt before. And then one day, my good friend who just tried to call me here, he goes, "You got it." And I go, "I got what?" And he goes, "You got serenity." And I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, it snuck up on you. Didn't even know it." And it was just because I was able to let those emotions go and start to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. And now I'm the guy that I wear my heart on my sleeve, right? If I see something that's moving, it'll bring me to tears because I let that emotion. I am never going to put a cap on my emotion ever again. I'm never going to push it down because the destruction that it created in my life. My two oldest boys don't want a whole lot to do with me. My three of my girls don't want a whole lot to do with me. I have a good relationship with my daughter that is the one that went through drug treatment, and my son that currently lives with me. And I'm going, like, I destroyed that family because of my addiction,
Yeah.
and I'll never get it back. Do I feel sad? Absolutely. Right.
Yeah. But it is powerful, man. And so that was my thing with the rehab. What I seen a lot of people in there for their second, third, some their fourth time. And I'm like, this is just fucked. Like, I just don't understand what's going on here. Or I see people that are living in the addictive recovery, but never pushing forward. I've seen that as well, of people that came back for their second or third time, but they're like, oh no, I got to figure it out. I just had this little minor thing and I just came back. I used once and I came back. I'm like, okay. So I just started analyze as the sober person that came in, right? Like sober-ish, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, you know what? Like, there's, these people are living in fear. A lot of them are living in fear that, okay, if something happens, there's going to be another trigger that's going to trigger me to do something, and they're living in fear. So that's what took me to this have it all lifestyle. Was, these are people that are a lot of them addicted. If the warrior program, a lot of those guys are high producers, man. Like, and so I'm watching and learning from all of these people that are going through this, and they're, well, how, yeah, use your addiction. Like, use it for good. And you can't fix those things that happened in the past, but guess what? You can change the narrative around it. And we teach people, back to the CBT game, right? The gift that's in the other side of what happened. You may not see it right away,
Yeah.
but it's like, man, like, if my wife didn't leave me, would there be awakened tradesmen? Would there be people reaching out? And it's like, dude, like, I can't believe you said that on your podcast. And like, or like, are you kidding me? Like, no, it's just amazing to see, like, if you really look, and that, you can't have the dark without the light. Let's put it
That's
that
true.
way.
Absolutely.
There's always, if you look at any narrative, okay, my wife left. Okay, well, what was the good thing happening at the same time? There's always something good that's happening at the exact same time. We got people in the program where, abusive fathers and stuff like that, and alcoholic fathers, that, one guy thanked his father. He's not around anymore. But he thanked his dead father in front of 20,000 people in a group in Mexico. Like, it was when you could have gatherings. and, and he's thanking his father for being the person that he was. And it was just powerful, man.
Yeah.
So, for you to, for, when I say you, I mean people, just, yeah, carrying those shitty stories around like it's, a backpack full of lead, and it's not serving you, man. So just let it go. But the only way that you're going to do that is change. Yeah. And that was my thing. You brought up like positive quotes and positive, books. They're great, but there's no actionable items behind them. So you have these big epiphanies. It's like someone going to a Tony Robbins event, right? Like, okay, it's 2 days of an intense boom in your face. Like, here we go. You leave 3 days later, you have the same shitty life that you had before you went to the event, because there's no accountability unless you paid the 10 grand or whatever for his program. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, like, but that's why those people, and that's why these programs exist, is because we, should we need coaches? Should we need mentors? You know what? Maybe not. But how many courses have you bought in your lifetime that sit on a shelf or sit in your computer on a hard drive, right? That you never did.
I got lots.
Because it was, yeah, right? And this is the reason why, okay, you might pay a little extra. There's a premium. Could I go online and watch a YouTube about how to, run through a narrative on a shitty story and figure out, some CBT work, or, something like that? Yeah, you could find that anywhere. But guess what? Having someone behind your corner, hey, did you do this today? No, I didn't. Okay, well, why didn't you? Because I just didn't want to. Okay, did you do 10 push-ups today? Because you couldn't do 10 before, right? Like, no, I didn't do 10 push-ups today. You know what? Okay, how can you do 10 push-ups today? You still got 20 minutes before check-in, like, or, before the time runs. We have our guys check in before midnight. So if I wake up in the morning and there's not, well, there's some consequences.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the accountability behind it. And you know what? After your brothers and sisters that are in the program are having to do these extra assignments because you didn't pull your weight, well, maybe next time that you will pull your weight, and it's only benefiting you because you're the one that did the 10 push-ups, to do a little bit of activity for the day. Did you do your journaling today? No. Did you meditate for like 30 seconds? Did you do that? Like, sit and do three, do some breath work for like 30 seconds? No. Okay, well, why? So having that narrative of and the accountability is huge, man. I can't say it enough. And there's fruit in the pudding. And back to you see somebody else doing it and you see them putting in the work, and then all of a sudden their business is going like this. Yeah. And their family life is going like this, up, 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 right? just good shit happening because they're putting in the work. And that's what just lights me on fire, is seeing the people. And then just like these, when they start setting 90-day targets, we teach people how to make 90-day targets. And like in, not just in business, but in their body, and in their relationships, how many dates are you going on this in the next 3 months?
Absolutely.
We got guys that are paying for dates 3 months in advance, just so they have the babysitters lined up. They have uh, they have the time booked off work for the weekend getaway or whatever. Like, this is high producers. What we're doing is creating high producers, not just in business, but in life. And that's where, having a great business is great, but if you look around and you deal with them, I know you do, is their family life. And this is why we're talking, I believe, is because, yeah, their home life suffers and their kids are suffering. And man, like, having a great business is great, but who's going to remember that when, when you're on your third wife, you got kids from multiple different ladies, is that really working out for you? Now you got to grind. The only reason you're grinding now in business is just to cover the spread on your child support. And trust, like, I get it. Like, I know, but it's not a fun place to be at all. And that's, again, it's just that cycle of depression and, the anger, frustration, and then you just take it out on everybody.
That's right. That's absolutely right. I mean, that's a big thing with addiction and the anger and those, keeping your emotions all stuffed, right? So like, I'm so glad that you've been able to, go through that journey yourself, and then the wherewithal to go, hey, I can help other people, and then create that process of the awakened tradesman to help other guys in trades, guys like us, oil patch riggers, pipeliners, whatever, that we can have a place where we can have a conversation. We can have a place where we can come and learn those skills, how to have a balanced life. Like, I grew up in an alcoholic home, and the role model I had wasn't the best, right? And it took me a long time to figure out I had to break that model of following the pattern of the way I was raised, so I could start raising my kids better, so I could start behaving better for me as a human being. So I mean, I think what you're doing is just an amazing thing. I'd like to come and invite you back again to speak. I really think that there's a huge opportunity to have us do some work together with the Man Wave movement, which is a group that I'm a director on, that does specifically just work for men's mental health. Right? If you've got problems, you got issues, and you want someplace safe to share it, try the Man Wave movement. We can at least guide you to a place where you can get help. But I love your program and the fact that you talk about the balance of the 4 F's, right? Which are family, fuel, finances. Yeah.
Family, fuel, finances. Yeah. Family, fuel, finances, and fitness.
There it is, fitness. I should have known that. So I mean, it's been great having you on. I'd love to have you come back and do some stuff. But how can people get a hold of you if they want, if they see something tonight that trips their trigger or goes, hey, maybe that's what I need? How can they get a hold of you? How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, Instagram at Pipe Dream Solution, no S, just Pipe Dream Solution, or Facebook, Nick Gemmel, and I'm all over there. Or just just search Pipe Dream Solution, and I pop up all over the place there. And
cool. Well, I'll make sure I put it in the chat as well down below so that anybody can reach out. Thanks, Nick. Sharing a little bit of your story and understanding, why you're doing what you're doing. Man, you're an amazing human being. The gift that you have to give and change men's lives is powerful, and I want to continue to support that work that you do, because I think, if we're all able to help each other, rise up, like my friend Mike rise up, and we both know Mike, it'll get everybody's boat floating. And if everybody's boat's floating, we're all going to be in a better place.
No, that's just my thing, man, is just, and that's where these, like, having, going back to the children before we go off here. Like the children and society come from healthy men. And healthy men doesn't mean, a guy that can flex and has 20-inch biceps, right? It's being able to be vulnerable when you need to, and being able to, produce, like be able to produce and be able to be there, be present for your family and your kids. Like that's going to create a society where we're not going to burn it all down. And that's where we're at right now, right? If you look around the US and even Canada's getting there, it's just, it starts with the healthy man. And it's just where it is. So the more that we can do that and go produce, man, like go make money, go produce, but have that heavy heart and be there for your family. But first it starts with you. If you're not healthy, you can't do none of it. And then we just collapse. So
Absolutely.
that's my commitment. And that's why I'm here now.
Cool, man. Well, all the power to you, my friend, because I'm excited about being part of supporting you guys and just want to see where you guys go along. I think it's going to be a great thing to have you on board for sure, man. So yeah, let's do it.
I appreciate it.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining me for another podcast, my first and only podcast so far with an interview. So thanks, Nick, for being here for that. And if you guys got any questions, you want any comments, certainly put them down and I will be sharing them with Nick, and Nick can get back to you guys, or I'll get back to you guys as soon as we possibly can. Have a great night, everyone, and love you all.